My name is Marcus, and I'm 29 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Sacramento, California. Each morning starts with a smooth cup of espresso, a glance at recent tech articles, and a calm drive to the innovation lab. I'm a user experience researcher at a startup focused on wearable technology, a role many think is just about testing gadgets, but it actually involves behavioral studies, product design feedback, and shaping how people interact with emerging digital tools. You could say, I live a simple, well ordered life. I have my routines espresso brewed to exactly 190 degrees so. Spotify playlists, titled After Obscure Fonts and Lunch Breaks, where I sketch app wireframes no one asked for. My apartment is clean, my bike always tuned, and the silence at night immaculate. But that peace shattered one Tuesday morning right before my second espresso shot. My sister Danielle called voice, trembling words rushed. Marcus, Dad's in trouble. Real trouble. It's the house. We're about to lose it. I remember gripping my phone so tight my knuckles cracked. The word lose echoed like a fire alarm through my otherwise controlled mind. Mom and Dad had always been careless with money, but I thought retirement would tame them. Apparently, gambling doesn't retire. The next day, I flew down, pen in one hand, checkbook in the other. I covered the mortgage backlog, $28,000 gone faster than I could blink. They were crying, hugging me, calling me a blessing. It felt good. For about a minute, then came the casual questions. Marcus, can you help with the car too? Your uncle needs a little loan. And oh, Danielle's college fees. Suddenly, my savings weren't just mine anymore. It was like the moment I opened the financial floodgates, they assumed the river had no end. And maybe I played along too easily. There's something about wanting to be the dependable one, the one who saves everyone even when no one's really drowning, just swimming the wrong way. Nicole. My girlfriend back then noticed the shift in me. She was a lab tech in biotech, whip smart, and impossible to lie to. You're not their son, you're their ATM, she said one night. Arms crossed, eyes soft but firm. There's love, Marcus. And there's guilt dressed as love. I laughed it off. They're just overwhelmed. Once things settle, they'll stand on their own. She tilted her head. Are you sure they ever knew how? That question haunted me. I started seeing the little things differently, how Mom would guilt trip me with her migraines, how Dad never asked how I was doing, just how my stocks were. There was a moment, a painfully comedic one, when I walked into their kitchen and found a magnet on the fridge that read, Family where life begins and your wallet ends. I almost choked on my cold brew. But I brushed it off. I told myself I was exaggerating. After all, wasn't it noble to take care of your own? Wasn't sacrifice the highest form of love? Here's where I'll pause and ask you this. Share your thoughts on Nicole's decision. Was she being too harsh, or was she simply protecting herself after years of emotional strain? This question invites you to reflect and share your perspective on setting boundaries in family relationships and the importance of self-respect and self-love. Drop your city and local time. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Thank you for listening to Nicole's story. Don't forget to share your thoughts and follow for more heartfelt, thought-provoking stories. The first check felt like an act of heroism. I told myself I was just stepping in during a crisis, that I could afford it, that it was temporary. But somehow temporary became routine. Every week or two, a new emergency popped up. The water heater broke. Danielle needed new textbooks. Uncle Raymond's truck got towed. I didn't just patch one hole in the family boat, I became the whole damn repair crew. It wasn't just the money. It was the tone. No one asked anymore. They expected. I remember Mom texting me, "Can you wire $400 for the dentist? No punctuation, no please, no thank you, just a request, like I was customer service." That day I stared at the message for 10 full minutes before typing, "Sure." I deleted it twice, trying to figure out if I was being cold or kind. Eventually, I hit send without saying anything else. Nicole was watching all of this unfold with growing concern. "You're bleeding out slowly," she said one night while we were folding laundry, "and they're not even noticing the blood." I told her that was dramatic. She told me it wasn't. She tried to make me laugh even when I was tired and detached. She once wrapped a towel around her shoulders like a cape and declared herself Captain Boundary, doing dramatic poses in the living room. "Repeat after me," she said in a superhero voice. "It is not selfish to say no." I laughed genuinely for the first time in weeks. But laughter didn't fix the situation, and Captain Boundary was soon outnumbered. It was subtle at first, the change in how my family spoke to me. The way Dad would start conversations with, "I hate to ask again," but never actually stopped asking. Or how Danielle once joked at a barbecue, "We're lucky Marcus is our safety net." The others laughed, but I felt something turn in my chest. A net can catch someone, but if people keep jumping, even the strongest net rips. The tipping point came when Mom called about a new opportunity. "There's this investment your cousin's getting into," she said. "Real estate. It's hot. We could make double in a year. He just needs 30 grand to buy in." I actually laughed out loud. Not a haha, that's funny laugh. A dry, stunned, are you serious kind of laugh. "Mom," I said, "do you realize how much I've already given?" She went quiet for a beat. Then, "You act like you're some kind of martyr. You think you're better than us just because you went to college and live in some fancy apartment?" That hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't showing off. I was surviving. I built my life from hours of unpaid internships, ramen dinners, coding classes, and sheer stubbornness. I never once brought it up to shame them. But clearly they felt shamed anyway. Nicole found me sitting on the floor that night, phone in hand, staring at nothing. She knelt beside me and whispered, "You can't fix people who benefit from staying broken." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My throat had a knot the size of a fist. A few days later, Nicole made dinner, my favorite salmon with garlic butter and asparagus, and we ate in silence. Finally, she said, "Marcus, you don't owe them your peace." I looked at her exhausted. "But they're my family." She nodded. "Exactly. That's why it hurts so much." The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my brother. His tone wasn't angry. It was cold. "You've changed," he said. "Ever since you started making money, you've looked down on us." I sat on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to my chest, and realized I had spent thousands of dollars to keep this family afloat, and still I was the villain. Still I was the one who changed, not their constant taking, not their absence of gratitude, not their silence when I was clearly struggling. Me. There's a strange kind of heartbreak that comes from helping someone and being hated for it. It's not loud or fiery, it's quiet, like pouring water into a plant every day only to watch it wither in resentment. Nicole saw it coming before I did. She always did. While I was busy rationalizing my family's behavior, she was quietly observing the cracks I refused to acknowledge. One evening, she asked me to sit with her. No distractions, no phones, just sit. She placed 2 mugs of chamomile tea between us like peace offerings. "I need to ask you something," she said. "If I treated you the way they do, would you still be with me?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "If I asked you for money every week, never thanked you, guilted you when you said no, made jokes at your expense and ignored your pain, would you stay?" It was a brutal question. One of those questions that doesn't come with a safe answer. I looked into her eyes and saw something terrifying. She wasn't angry. She was hurt. Quietly, deeply hurt. "No," I admitted. She nodded. "Then why are you staying in a relationship with your family that you wouldn't accept from a partner?" I didn't know what to say. That question stuck with me like a pebble in my shoe, small but impossible to ignore. I started replaying conversations in my head. The time Mom said, "You owe us. We raised you." The time Danielle accused me of acting white because I wouldn't co-sign her second car loan. The time Dad rolled his eyes when I said I was tired, muttering something about soft kids and their burnout. These weren't moments of connection. They were reminders that in their eyes my value was transactional. Not emotional, not relational, just economic. Nicole, meanwhile, started stepping back. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. I could see it in the way she no longer tried to talk me down from my panic spirals. She still loved me, I knew that, but she was building a boundary I didn't yet understand. She told me, "I love you, Marcus, but I can't watch you destroy yourself for people who won't even meet you halfway." I remember laughing, trying to diffuse the tension. "Destroy's a strong word." She leaned forward. "Is it? You haven't been to therapy in months. You haven't worked out. You don't laugh the same. Your shoulders are always tense, and you flinch every time your phone rings." She was right. My phone had become a grenade. Every vibration came with a potential explosion. A new crisis, a new accusation, a new withdrawal from the emotional ATM. Then came the final straw. Nicole had planned a weekend getaway for us, something simple, a cabin near Lake Tahoe. She booked it with her own money, packed everything, even downloaded my favorite road trip playlist. But the morning we were supposed to leave, Mom called. Danielle had been in a minor fender bender. Everyone was fine, but she needed help covering the deductible. Nicole stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, and asked me softly, "Are you going to cancel on me again?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I felt torn in two, and so I stayed. I stayed for a situation that wasn't urgent, wasn't life-threatening, wasn't mine to fix. And Nicole left, quietly, gracefully, with tears she didn't let me see until later. 3 days later, she returned to pick up some things. We sat on the couch in silence. Then she said, "I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I do. And I need you to love yourself enough to stop bleeding for people who won't even offer you a bandage." It was the first time I realized love could walk away and still be love. After she left, the apartment was too quiet. I kept catching myself wanting to tell her things, a new podcast I found, a joke I heard, a dumb product prototype at work. But all I had were echoes. And silence makes a terrible companion when your mind is full of ghosts. I wish I could say I had a moment of clarity, that I immediately called my family and set boundaries. But I didn't. I just sat there, lost. The kind of loss that doesn't come with directions, just dead ends, and maybe tomorrow. I stared at the half-empty suitcase Nicole left behind and thought I spent so much time trying to save my family, I didn't notice I was losing my future. Nicole's absence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. I still made 2 cups of coffee out of habit, still played our shared playlists, still opened the door expecting to hear her humming off key to some obscure indie band. But all I got in return was silence and the occasional hum of my fridge, which had never felt so smug. I buried myself in work. At least at the lab things made sense. Code behaved predictably. Data didn't guilt-trip you. Algorithms didn't ask you for rent money. But even there I was slipping. My supervisor pulled me aside one afternoon, concern softening his voice. "Hey, you good? You've been distracted." I nodded too quickly. "Just tired. It's family stuff." He didn't pry, but he didn't look convinced either. Then came Mom's birthday. A big family dinner at a seafood restaurant she liked. Danielle had organized it. "You better come," she said over the phone, half warning, half demanding. "After all the help you gave us, the least you can do is show up and smile." So I showed up, suit-pressed, bottle of wine in hand, even brought a new phone case because mine looked too scuffed, Danielle's words. The restaurant buzzed with cheerful noise, clinking glasses, sizzling platters, forced laughter. I sat at the end of the table, boxed in by obligation and overpriced lobster. It didn't take long for the jabs to start. Dad leaned over. "So, Mr. Bigshot, what invention are you working on now, robot, that wipes your tears when people say no?" Danielle laughed too loud. "Careful, Dad. He might send us an invoice for that joke." I smiled, the tight kind that never touches your eyes. Glad to know I still entertain you. Mom chimed in. We just want you to lighten up, honey. You've been so sensitive lately. Like everything's an attack. That was when something snapped. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I just looked at them one by one and said, I paid off your house, your car, your tuition. I bought groceries, fixed plumbing, even paid for a family vacation I didn't attend because I had to work. And now I'm sensitive because I want basic respect. Silence. Even the waiter froze. I stood up, placed the wine on the table, and added, You say I've changed. You're right, I have. I'm done being your solution. Figure it out. I left before dessert. Later that night, Mom texted, Can't believe you made a scene. We were just joking. Joking. Always joking when it was convenient, when it stung too much to be truth. I stared at the screen until it blurred, then powered off my phone. Permanently that night. For the next few weeks, I drifted. There's no other word for it. I went to work, did my tasks, even smiled during meetings, but inside everything felt weightless. Like I'd been holding my family on my shoulders so long I didn't know how to walk without their weight. I kept waiting for guilt to show up, for shame to knock at the door. But they didn't. Instead, I felt something else: space. Real, honest space. The kind that lets you breathe for the first time in years and realize how shallow your breaths used to be. I began writing down things I never said out loud. Moments I brushed off. Wounds I dismissed. The day Danielle accused me of being selfish for not buying her a second MacBook. The time Dad used my savings to bet on a horse named Lucky 7. It came in dead last. Or the night Mom cried because I wouldn't pay for her friend's medical bill, a woman I had never even met. One entry read, You can give someone your entire soul and they'll still ask for your bones. Still, I wasn't angry. Not really. I was tired. Deep tissue tired. The kind of tired that makes you question if love without boundaries is even love at all, or just servitude in a prettier outfit. The funniest part: they never once apologized. Not even a whisper of it. Just silence. Then group chat memes like nothing happened. Like I was supposed to reset, recharge, and report for duty again. But I was done. Not with love, but with their version of it. I thought I had reached my limit. I thought walking out of that restaurant would be the climax, the moment everything turned, the start of my healing. But life, in its own bitter irony, was just getting warmed up. 2 weeks after the dinner, I received a letter in the mail from a notary service. Confused, I opened it and felt my stomach drop. My parents had sold the condo I helped them buy 2 years ago. The same one I'd emptied my emergency fund for, the one they promised would be their forever place. And they hadn't even told me. Worse, they hadn't used the money to get something smaller or more affordable. No, they used it to invest in my cousin Derek's dream of opening a luxury vape lounge in Las Vegas. Yes, a vape lounge. I remember standing there in my kitchen, letter in hand, the sunlight pouring in like nothing had happened, as if the world had no idea that a part of me had just snapped in half. I called Danielle. She picked up on the second ring. Yeah, they sold it. Big deal. It's their property. I kept my voice steady. I paid for it. Yeah, but you gave it to them. Gifts don't come with chains, Marcus. Neither does love, I snapped. But you all seem to have attached a monthly invoice to mine. She hung up on me. For the next few days, I said nothing. To anyone. I didn't go to work. I sat on my couch, the letter resting like a lead brick on my coffee table. I kept rereading one line, funds to be used at discretion of recipients. That's what I had signed. My own naivety notarized and sealed. That weekend I saw Nicole at a mutual friend's birthday party. We weren't supposed to see each other, but Sacramento is small. She looked radiant, tired maybe, but lighter, happier. She approached me with the kind of gentle smile you reserve for someone you used to dream about. I heard about the condo, she said softly. I nodded. You were right. She didn't say, I told you so. She never would. Instead, she touched my arm and whispered, "You didn't deserve that." I swallowed a lump in my throat and smiled even though it hurt. She was the only person who had ever seen the whole picture, not just the money, but the emotional debt I'd been forced to carry. Later that night, I opened an old email account one I hadn't used since college. In it, I found a message I had once sent to myself, a digital time capsule titled, "Remember Why You Left." I had written it the first time I tried to move away from my family's toxicity, back when I thought I could escape with distance. The email said, "If they ever make you feel like your worth is based on what you give them, walk. If they only say, 'I love you' after you've transferred money, walk. If they mock your pain, minimize your effort, or twist your kindness into currency, walk, and don't look back." I read that line over and over, my chest tight. I had written those words for a future version of myself who might forget. And somehow I had. That's when I made the decision. I pulled out every document, every transaction, every receipt. I made copies not for legal use but for closure. Proof. Tangible proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the exploitation, that love should never come with an interest rate. I packed up a small box of family memorabilia, photos, letters, childhood drawings. I put it on the top shelf of my closet, not to revisit anytime soon, but to acknowledge that my love wasn't erased, just redefined. I didn't hate them, but I could no longer enable them. That night, I turned off my phone, lit a candle, and for the first time in years, I sat with myself. Just me. No buzz of expectation, no guilt, no invisible chains wrapped in smiles and obligations, just breath and quiet. And then I whispered it out loud like a confession to the walls, "I'm allowed to stop." And I did. It's strange how silence becomes addictive once you've survived enough noise. For weeks after cutting them off, my phone barely lit up. No missed calls from mom. No guilt-laced voice memos from dad. Danielle posted on social media as if I'd died. "Family always finds a way back," she wrote once with a picture of a candle and a Bible verse. I stared at it for a while, wondering if she saw the irony, or if she really believed she was the victim of my withdrawal. Then came the message that made my hands shake. It was an email from my mother. The subject line read, "How could you?" She didn't even say hi, just launched right in. "You've turned your back on the people who gave you everything. We didn't raise you to be this cold. We're not perfect, but we're your family. That should mean something. Danielle told me you've been keeping score. That's not love, Marcus. That's cruelty. Maybe success has changed you. Maybe you're ashamed of us now. But don't forget who changed your diapers, who paid for your braces, who sat through your high school science fairs. You think money makes you better?" I read it 3 times. Not because I needed clarity, but because I couldn't believe how masterful it was in turning everything upside down. They had rewritten the narrative completely. I was no longer the helper, the supporter, the exhausted lifeboat. I was the villain, the traitor, the cold one. And maybe I would have believed it if not for the journal Nicole once gave me. A plain, leather-bound book, the kind that smells like truth. She had written on the first page, "Document your reality, or someone else will rewrite it for you." So I started documenting. Not for revenge, not to prove anything, but to remember. I wrote about the time Mom said she was too tired to pick me up from college, so I took a 7-hour bus ride with a broken ankle. About the time Danielle borrowed my credit card for gas and used it for a spa weekend. About how Dad once said, "Emotions are for the weak," when I cried after Nicole left. I wasn't keeping score. I was acknowledging wounds that had never been allowed to scar. Around that time, something in me shifted. Not dramatically, not some TV movie epiphany, just a quiet moment at a crosswalk where I realized I wasn't scanning my inbox or bracing for bad news. I was still and free. I started running again. 3 miles every morning, no phone, just breath and pavement. I cooked actual meals, not microwave dinners eaten over emails. I even started therapy with a woman named Kendra who wore chunky glasses and had a laugh like crumpled paper. She didn't tell me I was crazy. She told me I was burned out from emotional labor that had never been compensated. You're not angry, she said. You're grieving. I blinked. Grieving what? The version of family you thought you had. That sentence hit harder than I expected. Because yes, that's exactly what it was. Grief. I had lost a fantasy. A hope that maybe, just maybe, I could buy peace. That if I gave enough, I'd finally be loved without condition. But that kind of love doesn't come with receipts. It either exists or it doesn't. The following weekend, my brother called me. First time in months. I stared at his name on the screen like it was a ghost. Eventually, I answered. His voice was clipped. You just gonna keep ignoring everyone, I replied calmly. I'm not ignoring. I'm healing. He scoffed. By pretending we don't exist, no. By accepting that you don't see me unless I'm useful. That shut him up. After a pause, he said, You've really changed, man. I had to, I said, because being who I was nearly destroyed me. He hung up. No apology, no acknowledgement, just click. And still, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stood there feeling something rise in me. Not pain, not pride, peace. The kind you don't have to earn. Grief doesn't come in waves. That's what people say, but it's not true. Waves have rhythm. They give you time to breathe between crashes. Grief, real grief, seeps. It gets into the corners of your thoughts, the gaps in your day, the last 10 seconds before sleep, and reminds you someone you trusted let you bleed. Nicole was gone. Not angry, not bitter, just absent. And that absence made everything else louder. I missed the way she used to talk back to the radio. I missed the way she'd label leftovers like they were lab samples. I missed the safety of her silence, the way she could sit with me for an hour and make me feel understood without saying a word. She didn't block me. That would have been easier. Instead, she lived her life. Quietly. Gracefully. A new photo here, a new quote there. She even shared a picture of the lake house trip we never took, standing with friends who smiled with their whole faces. That smile used to be mine to protect. One night I opened my fridge and stared at a half-empty shelf for 10 straight minutes. I wasn't hungry. I was hollow. And for the first time in a long time, I said the truth out loud. I don't know who I am without someone to save. It startled me. The echo bounced back like judgment. And I realized something I hadn't dared to admit before. I had built my identity around being the fixer, the reliable one, the helper. And when no one needed fixing, when no one wanted it from me anymore, I felt useless. So I tried to fix myself the only way I knew how. I reached back out. Not to Nicole. I wasn't that reckless. I reached out to my father. We met at a diner, neutral ground, pancakes and passive aggression. He was already seated when I arrived, scrolling through his phone. Look who showed up, he said, not looking up. Look who invited me, I replied, sliding into the booth. The waitress came and we both ordered coffee. We didn't need food. We needed truth. I just want to understand, I said. Why did you sell the condo without telling me? He shrugged. It was our decision. We figured you'd overreact. You mean care? No, he said, finally locking eyes with me. I mean overreact. I sat with that. Let it sting. I gave you everything I had. And you made sure we all knew it. That hit harder than any slap. I leaned back. So this was about pride. He looked away. You walked around like you were better than us. I walked around like I was exhausted, I said. Like I was bleeding out and no one noticed. His silence was a confession. I'm not here to fight, I added. I'm here to let go. He didn't respond, just stared into his coffee like it could save him from having to say, I'm sorry. When the check came, I paid it. Habit. Then I stood, placed a hand on his shoulder, and said, I love you. But I won't be the family's oxygen tank anymore. He didn't stop me when I walked away. Back at home, I sat by the window and watched the sky turn to bruised purple. I thought of Nicole, thought of Danielle, thought of the little boy I used to be, always trying to earn smiles with perfect grades and quiet obedience. And I whispered, You don't have to earn peace. Then I cried. Not the loud kind. The kind that slips out of you like steam, gentle, invisible, necessary. Grief doesn't leave you, but it does stop demanding all your attention. And slowly I was learning to listen to something else, my own heartbeat. Disappearing isn't as dramatic as it sounds. There's no slammed door, no handwritten letter by the nightstand, no climactic farewell. It happens slowly, by not replying, by not calling, by letting birthdays pass like clouds overhead. And then one day, you look at your phone and realize no one's reached out. Not in days, not in weeks. And somehow the silence feels more like freedom than abandonment. I moved. Not to another state, not even far across town, just enough to start fresh. New apartment, new street, new number. I told only my job and a handful of close friends. I didn't post about it. I didn't make an announcement. I simply stopped living in a place where my past had a key. The apartment was smaller, but the air was lighter. No lingering ghosts, no memories tied to doorways or coffee cups. I bought a couch I actually liked, not one chosen because someone else might visit. I painted the walls a warm, calm shade of gray. It felt like choosing neutrality after years of emotional warfare. Therapy continued. Kendra, the therapist with the crumpled paper laugh, started pushing me deeper. "What do you do when no one needs saving?" she asked one morning, tapping her pen against her chin. "I don't know," I admitted. "Then maybe it's time to find out." I started with small things. Taking myself to the movies. Cooking without trying to impress anyone. Sitting in cafes with no laptop, no purpose, just presence. And slowly the guilt began to loosen its grip. It wasn't linear. Some nights I still felt that ache, like I'd left someone behind. But the truth was, I had left myself behind long before I walked away from them. One night around midnight, I sat at my new kitchen table with a glass of wine and a notebook. I wrote one sentence at the top of the page. What does peace look like when it's not earned through sacrifice? I didn't have an answer, but I was asking the right questions now. Eventually, my family noticed the silence. Danielle sent a single message. "You're acting like we're dead." I didn't reply. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I had nothing left to explain. I had explained myself for years through money, through favors, through exhaustion. And when my actions stopped speaking for me, their silence did all the talking. Mom tried next, a voicemail this time. Her voice was soft, rehearsed. "I know you need space, but we're still your family. You can't just erase us." But I hadn't erased them. I had simply stopped writing myself into their script. Still, a part of me grieved. I missed Danielle's laugh when it wasn't sharp and loaded. I missed my mother's cooking the way she always added lemon to everything. I missed the idea of family, even if the reality had been something else entirely. Grief, Kendra reminded me, is not just for what dies, but for what never was. I began to build rituals. Morning jogs with music that made me feel like a clean slate. Weekend visits to a local bookstore where the owner learned my name. I even signed up for a woodworking class where I spent 3 weeks trying to build a stool that wobbled no matter how I measured it. The instructor called it abstract. I called it healing. Then something unexpected happened. I received a letter. A real one, handwritten, no return address. It was from Nicole. Inside was just one paragraph. "I don't know if this will reach you, but I hope it does. I never stopped caring. I just had to stop carrying. I hope you're safe. I hope you're sleeping again. And I hope someday you can look in the mirror and see someone who deserved love all along, not just for what he gave, but for who he is." I didn't cry, but I did fold that letter and place it inside the same journal where I'd written down all my family debts. Not because it was a debt, but because it was finally something given freely. That night I slept deeply. No dreams, no flashbacks, just breath and stillness. I wasn't saved, but I was safe, and that was more than enough. It was bound to happen sooner or later, the reckoning. You can vanish from their world, but eventually the world circles back. And when it did, it came not with kindness, but accusation. It started with a group message I didn't know I was still part of. "Marcus, you need to explain yourself," Danielle wrote. "Mom's been crying every day. Dad says you've forgotten your roots. And you didn't even show up for Uncle Ray's funeral." Uncle Ray. The man who once told me to man up when I said I was struggling with depression. The same man who borrowed $5,000 to start a crypto empire and ghosted me for a year. I hadn't even known he passed. The thread lit up with guilt-shaming one message after another. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years chimed in. One even said, "Guess money doesn't buy loyalty." I stared at the screen, pulse, steady hands still. I didn't respond. Not right away. I let it sit for 24 hours the way a wound closes, not with stitches, but with patience. Then I wrote, "You want an explanation? Fine." And I sent them what no one expected, a voice message. My voice was even quiet, surgical. "I helped you because I loved you. I gave until it hurt. And every time I tried to speak up to say I was drowning, you told me I was too sensitive, too distant, too selfish. You never once asked if I was okay. You only asked for more." Pause. Breathe. "I paid off your debts. I filled your fridge. I paid medical bills for people I'd never met, signed loans I didn't believe in, and missed out on moments I'll never get back because I thought love meant sacrifice. But the truth is, love without respect isn't love. It's exploitation. And I'm done being your silent provider." Another breath. "You can call me ungrateful. You can call me selfish. But I know now boundaries aren't betrayal. They're survival. So unless you want a relationship built on honesty, not handouts, consider this my goodbye." And I hit send. No emojis, no explanations, just silence after truth. They didn't respond. Not right away. Maybe they didn't know how. Maybe they never thought I'd speak. Because when someone's always given the moment they stop, it feels like theft. But it wasn't theft. It was reclamation. That night, I sat by the window, the same one I used to watch with longing. But I didn't feel guilt. I felt release, as if every invisible chain they wrapped around me had finally cracked. Then came the knock. Not metaphorical, a real knock. At the door stood my mother. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. Her face looked tired, not from age, but from weight she'd never acknowledged. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and asked, "Can we talk?" I let her in, because despite everything, I wasn't cruel. I made tea. We sat across from each other like strangers who used to share blood. "I didn't know," she said, finally, eyes fixed on the steam rising from her cup. "I didn't know you felt like that." "That's the thing," I said softly. "You didn't ask." She nodded, eyes welling. "We just thought you'd always be there." I whispered, "until I couldn't be." And then she said the words I never thought I'd hear, "I'm sorry." It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was a start. A crack of light in a house long dark. We didn't talk for hours, just drank tea, sat, existed, and that was the most honest moment we'd shared in years. She left with no promises. I didn't need them. All I needed was that one sentence, not to erase the past, but to make peace with it. The apology didn't heal everything. It didn't bring Nicole back or erase the years of quiet resentment and shouted expectations. But it cracked open something in me, not forgiveness, not yet, but room. Room to breathe. Room to stop flinching at kindness. Room to consider that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't broken, just bruised in places no one ever looked. After my mother left, I didn't rush to call Danielle or my father. I didn't unblock anyone or rejoin group chats. I simply lived. I let days go by without narration, without guilt. I sat in the sunlight without thinking about whose shadows I was carrying. Then one morning I wrote a letter. Not for revenge, not for closure, but for clarity. I didn't send it. I printed it, signed it, and folded it into thirds. I sealed it in an envelope labeled simply truth. It was never meant for them. It was for me. It read, "Dear family, I gave you everything I could. Not because you asked, but because I thought love required proof. I poured myself dry, and in return, I received silence, jokes, and judgment. You told me I changed, and I did. I became someone who no longer lets himself be measured by what he gives. I became someone who doesn't confuse being needed with being loved. I became someone who finally realized that unconditional love should go both ways. And when it doesn't, it's not love, it's a transaction. So here it is, my final gift, the truth. I don't hate you. I simply no longer serve the role you assigned me. I am not your wallet. I am not your therapist. I am not your cushion, or your excuse, or your investment. I am your son, your brother, your kin. And if that's not enough without the extras, then it was never enough to begin with. I hope you find peace. I know I am. Marcus. I tucked the letter into the back of my journal. It lives there still, a monument to a boundary honored. Months passed, seasons changed. I saw Nicole again, not in some sweeping cinematic reunion, but in line at a bookstore. She was holding a book on grief. I was holding one on joy. We smiled. She asked, "How's your heart?" I said. "Learning." We didn't make plans. We didn't promise anything. We just stood there, two people who had loved and lost and lived. That night I walked home beneath a sky so wide it felt like forgiveness. I looked up and whispered to no one, "Thank you for breaking me just enough to begin again, because here's what no one tells you. Sometimes love looks like leaving, sometimes healing looks like disappearing, and sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is say, 'I'm done,' and mean it." I live differently now, not guarded, just grounded. I say no without explanations. I give only what I have, and most importantly, I love myself in a way that doesn't require suffering as proof. And when people ask me, "Do you still talk to your family?" I smile and say I talk to the version of them that loved me without a receipt. That version still lives inside me. Then I go back to my quiet life. Espresso brewed just right. Playlists named after fonts. Windows wide open. And peace, real peace, the kind you don't pay for.